Hi, David Newlands here again from Portobello in Edinburgh, Scotland. And today I'm going to be talking about how we express the future in English, how we talk about things that haven't yet happened but that we expect to happen. And the first thing to say is there's no true future tense in English, where we take the base or infinitive verb and alter or inflect it. And that's different from French or Spanish and other languages. In French, the verb for to learn is apprendre, and we inflect that verb to create the future, j'apprendrai, for I will learn. In Spanish, aprender is the verb for to learn, and we inflect that verb to get the future tense, I will learn, as apprendere. In English, things are different. Instead of inflecting the base verb, we add an auxiliary or helping verb, the two most common of which are will and going to. So that we can say, I will learn, or I'm going to learn. There's other ways of talking about the future in English, but those are for another day, another video. This video is about will and going to. Before we get started properly, let's remember that in English we often use contractions, so that it's probably more likely that rather than I will learn, you'll hear I'll learn. I'll being a contracted form of I will. And similarly for you'll instead of you will, she'll instead of she will, he'll instead of he will, it'll instead of it will, we'll instead of we will, and they'll instead of they will. In none of these cases will you hear the word will, and so you've got to listen out for the sound ill. And we get other contractions. So if I say to you, won't you come for dinner? In the question form, then you should be aware that won't is a contracted form of will not. Okay, let's get going. And we'll start by talking about will, using the auxiliary verb for facts or predictions about the future. So I can say, it will be my birthday on 28th September, or I'll see you later. Now, will, as an auxiliary verb, can also be used where there's perhaps not very firm evidence for my prediction about the future, where in a sense I'm expressing an opinion. So I could say, and I should say that this can often be used when I use I think or I hope. So I could say, I think Aberdeen will win the match. And by the way, I'm a supporter of Aberdeen Football Club. Now, going to can also be used as a way of predicting the future. But here we're likely to have some sort of evidence for our prediction, so that there's some basis for what we think is going to happen. In a sense, we can sort of see the future from here, from the present. So I look out the window and I say, look at those rain clouds, those dark rain clouds. It's going to pour with rain. We can use both will and going to in some situations where they more or less mean the same thing. So with the same theme of it raining outside, because after all this is Scotland, I could say we'll get really wet if it keeps raining, and I can say we are going to get really wet if it keeps raining. and those two sentences express more or less the same meaning. The main difference between will and going to, just to repeat, is that we use going to where we've got some evidence for our prediction, and we use will where we tend not to have such firm evidence, and it's based on our hopes, what we wish to happen, or our opinion of what's going to happen. So if I say Aberdeen are going to win the match, this maybe reflects the fact that Aberdeen are 3-0 up and there's only 2 minutes left of the match. I've got some evidence for my prediction about the result of the match. But if I say I think Aberdeen will win the match, this is likely to be said before the match has begun, the day before, and it can often be based upon my opinion or what I hope is going to happen. Okay, that's talking about predictions of the future, but we can also talk about plans or decisions, intentions for the future, and again use both will or going to, but in different ways. If we're talking about our plans for the future, we tend to use going to when we have already decided what to do at the point of speaking, and we use will when we have not decided beforehand, but that we are just making up our mind about what we plan to do at the moment of speaking. Let me give you an example. There's no food in the house. I'll go to the supermarket this afternoon. Here, I've probably only just realised at the point of speaking that there's no food in the house, and I've decided there and then that I'll find time to go shopping, go to the supermarket this afternoon. So we're using will there. Instead, I could say, there's no food in the house, I'm going to go to the supermarket this afternoon. So in this case, I've realised for some time that there's no food in the house, and I've decided at some earlier point before speaking that I'm going to go to the supermarket this afternoon. Okay, a couple more things. We've been talking about will as an auxiliary verb, which is a helping verb, but it can also be used as what's called a modal verb about the future, and these are verbs used in certain situations like asking permission, or making a request, or asking permission, or expressing willingness. So a few examples. Will you open the window? So that's a request. I could say, I'll let you go out with your friends as long as you're back by 9 o'clock. So that's giving permission, perhaps to a teenager who wants to go out with her friends. Or I could say, yes, I'll come to your party. So that's expressing willingness. So that's will as a modal verb for the future. But you may also hear the word shall being used as a modal verb for the future. This tends to be the case in questions, asking, offering or giving suggestions, and it tends to be used with the pronouns I and we. As an example, it would be, shall we go out for dinner tonight? Now, although you will still hear this, this is now very old-fashioned. I personally don't use the word shall. I use the word will instead. I would say, will we go out for dinner tonight? Okay, let's just quickly recap. In English, we talk about the future by using auxiliary verbs, principally will and going to. In some situations, they can be used to mean the same thing, but there are usually differences. If we're talking about predictions for the future, will tends to be used when there is less firm evidence for what we predict will happen in the future, and going to when there is some firmer basis, some firmer evidence for what we predict. We also use will and going to for plans for the future, and here the difference is that we use going to when at the point of speaking we have already decided what we plan or intend to do, whereas we tend to use will as our decision about the future, but made only at that point that we are speaking. We've only just made up our mind. Okay, that's it for just now. Bye for now.